When I won the World Series, I was numb with excitement.
When I won, it validated my career choice.
When I won, I hired a private jet to take my dad and I back home.
When I won, I was instantly tackled by all of my friends, and the rest is history.
When I won, I went looking for the best cash game I could find.
When I win, I'll throw a really big party here in Vegas, take my bracelet to the Netherlands, and throw even a bigger party there.
When I win, I have literally no idea how I'm going to react. We'll see.
When I win, I'm going to do a fist bump Tiger Woods will be proud of.
Welcome to the 2014 World Series of Poker Main Event Final Table Telecast presented by Gentleman Jack. The wait is finally over. Tonight is the night. A champion is crowned. $10 million to the last man standing right here at the Rio All-Suite Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, Nevada. It started 4 months ago, but it ends tonight. The ultimate poker stage inside the Penn & Teller Theater. 3 players remain, and they are all tough competitors. The Netherlands, Jorrit van Hof, is the current chip leader. He put on a dominating performance last night, knocking out 3 players. Sweden's Martin Jacobson also put on a big show last night, and he now sits in second chip position. The short stack is Felix Stevenson, who was all over the leaderboard last night, but is now positioned to become the first Norwegian to win the main event. It is quite the international affair, three-handed, with that life-changing bracelet on the line. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the final night of the 2014 World Series of Poker main event. I'm Lon McCarron. With me, as always, my longtime broadcast partner, Norman Chat, and 3-time World Series bracelet winner, Antonio Esfandiari. Gentlemen, let's get right to the leaderboard. Van Hof once up to 110 million chips, but Stevenson picked up a lot of chips late. It's anyone's ball game.
Absolutely. I mean, there's still 3 players left. It's no limit hold'em. It's poker. Anything can happen. It's way too early to call it.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Norman, what do you think we can expect from our remaining 3 players tonight?
Well, Lon, there are 2 types of people I can't figure out, women and anyone from another country. Thankfully, Shakira isn't at this final table. Here's what I do know about these talented pros. They'll be pressing the edges, they'll be engaged in psychological warfare, and they'll be pouncing like a Kardashian on the next reality show opportunity. Tonight you'll see the 2 purest forms of poker, 3-handed and heads up. Huge stakes, everything on the line. It's marriage with cards and chips. I'm going to sit back, watch, and enjoy.
No, you're going to be sitting there working all night long with us. Let's talk about our leader, Jorrit van Hof. Aside from his hair, Antonio, you thought he put on quite a show.
Yes, I thought he put on a clinic. I mean, he had the chips and he played a big stack very well, and it takes a certain kind of talent to, have that kind of aggression with a big stack. And I think he picked his spots very carefully. He was very selective about when he was aggressive. He played solid, when he needed to. And I just absolutely loved the way he played.
Norman, you watched him play all night last night. Does he strike you as the kind of guy who can carry the ball across the finish line?
Well, what we haven't seen yet is he hasn't taken the big blow to his chin, gone down to the canvas, and had to pick himself up. I want to see how he reacts when he no longer has the chip lead. He's got the right comportment, but I want to see him get off the canvas and see how he reacts then.
Well, Kara Scott caught up with Van Hof just a few minutes ago, and let's hear what the chip leader had to say.
Jorrit started the final table as a chip leader, still the chip leader going into the final 3. Back in July, you said that Martin and Felix were probably your toughest opponents here at the final. So talk to us about the strength at the final 3.
Yeah, I mean, I've been playing for years with Stevenson online already, and he's a very good poker player, very strong player. And Martin Jacobson, I haven't played a lot with him outside of this event and accidentally in London. But I just know that he's a good player from, talking to other people.
We've talked a lot about how important your mental preparation is. So how has that played into your success here so far?
Yeah, I think it definitely helped. I was pretty calm all day long. I'm feeling pretty strong. I felt pretty strong all day long. I'm really happy with my game. And I think, not getting too emotional, or when you get emotions, just try to harness them in the right way. It's something that I've put a lot of effort in, and I guess it's paying off now. So.
Okay, thank you so much. Going into the final 3 as the chip leader.
Here, a look at the tail of the tape of our final 3 players. Van Hoof, the oldest of this trio. Felix Stevenson at 24 years old. Martin Jacobson, 27. And I want to ask you, Antonio, about Jacobson because he impressed a lot of people last night coming from a way short stack to becoming a real competitor.
Right, so here's what we need to look at. Van Hoof played a big stack extremely well, but Jacobson nurtured and was so good with a short stack, which is also a different set of talent. And he did that magnificently.
And we've got a brand new bracelet winner tonight. No matter who wins, it's going to be somebody from Northern Europe, and that's got to stick in somebody's craw, I would imagine.
Well, it's amazing. These idiots have gotten really smart from Northern Europe. Phil Hellmuth certainly should be able to acknowledge that at some point.
Well, he'll probably take full credit for it, I'm sure. The most shocking event from last night was Mark Newhouse's elimination in 9th place. Just a year ago, he finished 9th, and with a big stack coming into this year's final table, no one thought that could happen again, but indeed it did. As you see, a big river bluff tried to be pulled off by Newhouse, but Will Tonking picked it off with the pocket queens, and that had the whole house stunned here, Antonio.
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, a lot of players said that they didn't like that play, but I think that in the end, he's capable of representing a jack so many times. And look, it's no limit hold'em. When you put your opponent to the test for all his chips at the main event final table, you know, it's a tough call. Queens is not a very easy call there. And so I'm still going to defend his play and say that I liked it. It didn't work out, but you can't be results oriented. He put his man to the test. It didn't work out.
And Mark, as we look at, go back in time a little bit and look at a tweet that he put out last year. He said, yeah, I'm there at the final table, and it's not going to happen again going out in 9th place. And Norman, I can't imagine how he's taking it right now.
Well, be careful what you don't wish for. As we know, the odds of someone making the main event final table the last 2 years was 1 in 524,000. Well, according to Ryan Feldman of ESPN Stats, the odds of finishing in exactly 9th place 2 years in a row the last 2 years.
You have the number?
1 in 42 million.
Oh, my gosh.
It makes the 1.5 million look like nothing. 1 in 42 million. 9th place twice in a row for Mark Newhouse.
Does the guy play the lottery? That's the only question. He's got to hit it. All right, as we wrap this up, and we're going to see three-handed play very soon, I need some predictions. Antonio, you've been on the chip leader's bandwagon. Is he the one who's going to ride?
You know, I think that given that he has the chip lead going into three-handed play, Van Hoof, I think that's my pick. He is my pick, and I think that he's in such a good spot to just keep doing what he did yesterday, especially three-handed, to bring home the bracelet. My pick is Van Hoof.
And based on our history, I'm afraid to ask, Norman, do you have a prediction for tonight?
Listen, I picked Beta over VHS. I picked Dell over Apple. I think I even picked the wrong best man at my first 2 weddings. I am done with picks and predictions.
There you go. Exactly what I expected. Thank you. You never disappoint. All right, the moment is almost here. Introductions and cards in the air right after this. The 2014 World Series of Poker is presented by Gentleman Jack Tennessee Whiskey, the Order of Gentlemen, and in part by the WSOP social game on Facebook and mobile. Sit and Go tournaments are starting right now. Download for free. Welcome back. $19 million still to be handed out tonight. Jort Van Hoof, Martin Jacobson, Felix Stevenson are ready. Let's go down to Tournament Director Jack Effel to start the evening.
We are moments away from getting the cards in the air. Blinds are 600,000, 1.2 million with a 200,000 chip ante. Jort Van Hoof will have the button for tonight's Shuffle Up and Deal. Please welcome international sports and entertainment announcer and the voice of the UFC Octagon, Mr. Bruce Buffer.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live from the Rio Hotel in Las Vegas for the World Series of Poker main event final table. And now, introducing the players, and introducing first, all the way from Norway, sitting in seat number 3 with 46,100,000 chips, Felix Stevenson. his opponent, seated in seat number 7, from Sweden with 64,750,000 chips, Martin Jacobson! And seated in seat number 5, presenting from the Netherlands with 89,625,000 in chips, they call him the Cleaner, Jorrit Van Hoef. Okay. And now, this is the moment World Series of Poker fans around the world have been waiting for, as the gladiators of the cards have taken their seats on the green felt battlefield of champions. And now, it's time! Let's shuffle up and deal!
Oh, what a way to get started three-handed. Thank you, Bruce Buffer. We did play 244 hands of poker last night to get us three-handed, 17 fewer than the total hands that were played at the final table. But we are in the level that they ended last year. So you take a look here at three-handed. Pressure is never going to let up. Big pay jump ahead, and you have to stick around to get a shot at that $10 million for our champion. The blinds at $601.2 million, 200,000 chip ante. And I've never seen a bigger smile on Martin Jacobson's face. He's a big fan of MMA. To have himself be introduced by Buffer, that was big for him. Van Hoef with a raise from the button with Queen 5 of spades.
Oh, there they go, just like that. We're back in action, boys.
It's like we never left. Jacobson, 27 years old, London-based Swede poker pro.
Spent most of last night on the short stack, finally with a healthy stack here, three-handed.
Jacobson doesn't usually take this long and fold, so I think he's going to
re-raise.
Yeah, he's
$8 million.
Coming in for a raise here.
3-bet to $8 million. Felix Stevenson folds. Jorrit Van Hoef from the Netherlands. He also lives in London. All three of these guys, Europeans, live in London, so they can play online poker.
So here's an interesting dynamic. It's the first hand three-handed. You know, in order to win tournaments, you have to be aggressive, especially when it's three-handed. And so Van Hoef on the button brings it in. He's the chip leader. Of course, he's going to do that with a wide range of hands. He actually picked up Queen 5 suited, which is a decent holding. Jacobson has now come over the top and three-bet him and put the pressure back on Van Hoef. You know, sometimes you might want to consider four-betting here just to set the tone of the table. But he knows that Jacobson doesn't really get out of line too often. And so I think in the end he's going to end up making the right decision, which is folding. Van Hoef was excellent at knowing when to, put in that fourth raise or to fold his hand yesterday. And so I don't think he's going to get out of line here. But theoretically, it might be an okay time to four-bet and just kind of set the tone that you're here to play and you're going to be table captain and there's nothing anybody can do.
Indeed, instead he folds, and Jacobson will take it with the pocket sevens, drawing first blood here at our three-handed final table. And we will update you with the chip counts at the top of the screen. We are on a 30-minute delay. We changed our coverage so we can include cards up as soon as a player commits chips to the pot. And three chips in play right now. The red oversized chip worth $500,000. The beige one, $250,000, and the lavender chip worth $100,000. Right when play ended last night, they took off the green 25K chips because they are no longer needed.
Those chips are starting to irritate me. I'm glad they're gone.
2.7. Jacobson getting busy early. A tournament specialist. Felix, a cash game specialist, and Van Hoef kind of a hybrid of the two, and Jacobson getting some cards. Suited ace 6, and Jacobson will take it again on the button. As we mentioned, Jacobson with career earnings of over $4.8 million, and he showed his tournament skills last night, Norman.
Yeah, it's really tough to be on the short stack that long. You're like on the edge of the cliff for hours and hours. He survived it, though. He went all in 18 times in 244 hands, plus he raised all in another time. 19 times in 244 hands. It's once every 13 hands he was pushing all in.
Quite a contrast to the rest of the tournament for him, where he was never all in with his tournament life at stake. Last night had to be a different story to survive.
So we're going to see a lot of this three-handed. The button, you know, is too powerful. You don't want to be giving up your buttons. Every three hands, it costs you 2.4 million chips around. And so almost every single button you're going to see these guys bring it in for a raise. Now, a lot of people sitting at home might look at a queen 4 offsuit and think, well, that's garbage. But in theory, you know, your opponents don't have to have hands. If nobody calls, you pick up all the money out there. So don't be surprised to see just a wide range of two cards opening for a raise on the button.
Jacobson staying busy. 7, 5, 10, 2 spades in the flop.
I don't need to say it, right, Norman?
Yeah, I've been playing poker since the late 50s, Antonio. I got to tell you, it is hard to make a pair.
That's correct. So now if you're the pre-flop raiser, you should almost always continuation bet on the flop. There's 7 million chips out there, and even though Stevenson has nothing, you know, there's a reasonable chance that Jacobson didn't connect. So you always have to stab. Even if you stab 2.4 million, you have a chance of winning. If you win the pot 1/3 of the time, it's a huge, huge profitable play. I don't like this play. I don't like checking back here, even with queen 4.
And there is a 4. And so that does pair Stevenson.
So I wouldn't be surprised if Jacobson leads here, just because Stevenson showed some weakness on the flop. You know, Stevenson is also the shorter stack. So if Jacobson bets, that puts a lot of pressure on Stevenson. Also, if a king or a jack comes out, Jacobson, you know, his hand is totally undetected. So yeah, he's bluffing, but he's got six cards that could really improve his hand. And Stevenson showing weakness on the flop. I think I would for sure bet here on the turn.
6.
Bet 6 million.
He couldn't bet till you told him to, Antonio.
A huge bet, almost a pot-sized bet from the Swede.
So if I'm sitting in Stevenson's shoes and my opponent called a raise pre-flop, check the flop, and now fires the turn, really the only hand he can have is a 10, maybe a 7. I think with a 5, he's probably more likely to check it. And I just turned a pair of 4s. I mean, you know, I'm not going to fold in 10 seconds. I can tell you that for sure. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm going to call him with bottom pair. But I will tell you that I'm not going to fold a pair of 4s that fast. It's very difficult to make a pair. I just turned a pair. I might have to look him up one time.
By the way,
go ahead.
When Jacobson moved all in 18 times last night, he was only called 3 times, so he was pretty fortunate there. He had usually a pretty big hand, but he was very fortunate no one ever came up with another big hand when he was moving all in.
Some tweets from poker royalty and royalty to be, maybe. You saw last year champion Ryan Reese, 2-time player of the year. What impresses him most about their play is how they carry themselves. It's very difficult to stay composed and stay in the moment and still be in contact with everything that's going on around you. And a sigh of relief from the other two as Jacobson will sit this one out. Von Hof with a raise from the dealer button, and that is the strongest position on the table when you have the button. Ace 8, ace tray, a weaker ace for Stevenson.
So in this spot, both players will probably miss more often just because they both have the ace in their hand. So it really just comes down to who's got the courage to fire at this pot, and almost always it's the pre-flop raiser. So if I'm Von Hof here and it's checked to me, I'm probably going to take a stab at it. I'm just going to bet 2 million and just hope it works. What I don't want to do is check back and give my opponent an opportunity to lead out into me on the turn.
So both pick up Broadway draws. And they like that.
You know, this is exactly what we just saw the hand before, where both opponents missed, and the caller pre-flop fired out on the turn. And so Stevenson is cutting out some chips. This is exactly the hand that just happened. Because the button checked, it gives your opponent an opportunity to make this play.
Just a note on the percentages next to their names, that indicates the percentage or the likelihood that they will win the pot outright. The leftover percentages indicate perhaps a split pot, but the bet does induce a fold from Von Hof, and so Stevenson and Jacobson taking their turns, taking shots at your Von Hof, our chip leader. Martin Jacobson impressed so many people yesterday and last night with how he played and moved up the chip ladder. He has picked up right where he left off today. We're three-handed for $10 million. Welcome back to evening in Las Vegas, the final night of the 2014 World Series of Poker main event. Lon Покерийн with Norman Chad and Antonio Esfandiari, and hundreds of fans of each of these players inside the Penn and Teller Theater at the Rio. Jacobson, Chef Jacobson, that was one of his career paths at one point, but he found poker, and you see the career earnings of the November Niners. Jacobson, $1.2 million, and Newhouse a little less than that. Jacobson, obviously the most experienced tournament pro of the November Niners and also of these final three.
We are three-handed with three beards. It's the first all-facial hair three-man final table since Doc Holliday, Bat Masterson, and Wyatt Earp at the 1888 Colorado Poker Championship High Roller.
The man with the button is first to act. It is Jacobson in a race to $2.7 million with 10-7 of hearts. And now the glasses on.
Didn't see that yesterday.
No, we did not. Pocket nines for the chip leader,
which is a monster three-handed. Von Hof is never calling here. He's lost a couple pots.
Re-raise 8.2.
And what Antonio means, he's always raising here. He does to 8.2 million.
Yeah, and it's almost too much for Jacobson to call, even though he has position. You know, and he has a very pretty hand. I mean, 10-7 of hearts is a great hand to take a flop to, but he doesn't want to call another five or so million, 5.5 million to take a flop. If he misses, if he catches one pair, it might not be good. So, I don't think we'll see this hand progress any further. I think this will just be a fold.
You saw that wide shot for just a second. Jacobson folds. They do have a look at the scoreboard. They can see chip counts, and they are paying close attention to that. Von Hof with the pocket nines and a 3-bet will take that pot. And as we saw a lot last night, when he stacks chips, he can't help but smile. Jacobson worked his way up from below 10 million chips yesterday, 10 big blinds, and he found ways, he found spots. And now he is on the heels of the chip leader, Jort Von Hof. Stevenson in third place now with 43.8 million. And he has the button to begin the hand. London-based Norwegian from Oslo, 24 years old. He turned 24 just after the World Series ended in July. And he's going to raise it to 2.8 million with Queen 7 offsuit.
I feel like Von Hof woke up with a hand again. I mean, this is exactly the demeanor that he had when he had the nines just 2 seconds ago. I mean, I know he looks exactly the same, but something about him tells me his energy is very strong right now. I think he woke up with a hand. I don't know.
Do you make anything of the sunglasses today just to mix it up, or?
Wow, he's got queens.
Wow.
Hello.
Nines and queens back to back.
Three-handed. I mean, that's just running good.
Re-raise,
another 3-bet to 8.3 million.
I don't love the size of this bet just because if Stevenson has rags, which he has probably 85% of the time, he's really not going to do anything with it. I would probably raise it just a little bit less to maybe induce a potential call. Queens is a monster hand.
And you want a player in the pot with you, putting chips in the middle.
Well, Queens is kind of vulnerable. Out of position, if an ace or a king flops, it's kind of tricky to play. So I completely understand that you don't want to see a flop, but given that it's three-handed and you're trying to win the tournament, I kind of want to play the hand. I don't want to run my opponent off the hand.
I don't want to grab it.
But also, it looks a little bit fishy as well. It doesn't look like queens.
That's what he's hoping.
Perhaps if Stevenson had a hand like ace-jack or ace-10, he might have gone with it. So, I see both sides of the spectrum.
All right, so our final three players in clear view of the large crowd here in the Penn and Teller Theater. A bunch of family members and friends on stage behind them, and then the theater filled throughout. Last year, Jay Farber led when play started three-handed. Farber ended up in second place to Ryan Reese. Von Hof with the button, with position, with chips, with rags, makes the raise with a 5-tray offsuit.
If you notice, we haven't had a single button fold so far. Every hand is raised from the button, whether it was 5-3 offsuit, Queen 4 offsuit, doesn't matter.
Call.
Stevenson wants to play with him with suited ace-5.
So if they both miss the flop, it'll probably be check, and then Von Hof will bet, and it'll be over.
There's a 5 for both players. And so this could be dangerous for Von Hof, and a check by Stevenson to Jorrit.
Given that Von Hof actually flopped something, he might check it back instead of where if it was Jack 6-9, he would always bet it because he has no chance of winning. But now he actually has a hand that might win. So, you know, some players like to bet here and some players like to check here. I think it goes both ways. But Stevenson, we saw muck bottom pair just a little while ago. No hesitation.
He checks back, 10 of clubs, misses both of these players. And
Stevenson can't really bet here. The 10 isn't exactly the greatest card. There's 3 overcards to his hand. He has a hand that has showdown value. He's always going to check. Now, if Von Hof wants to bet here, he can, but I don't think he will, given that he checked the flop and he still has bottom pair. I think it's more likely we'll see a check back.
Very early action, and they jump right back into the mindset of kill or be killed. The tension is palpable here. The next payout, $3.8 million. Survive that, and you've made at least $5.1 million. Check back from Von Hof. Queen now on the river. So, yeah, they both have a pair of 5s and then a flurry of overcards.
It's interesting. If it's check to Von Hof, you know, I think he's always just going to check it back because his opponent is always going to call him with a Jack 10 or a Queen unless he makes a massive bet here. Given the fact that his hand could just win in a showdown, Stevenson could have nothing or maybe just an ace-high hand. I think it's more likely that he'll just check and hope that his 5 is good.
4. Bet $4 million.
$4 million now on the river from Jorrit.
So if you think that Stevenson has a weak hand, potentially maybe a pair of 6s or a pair of 5s, this is a great bet. So really it just comes down to what you put your opponent on. He knows that Stevenson is not really the kind of player that's going to call here with bottom pair. Obviously he doesn't put him on bottom pair. It's an interesting bet.
And Felix now.
This would be a pretty heroic call with bottom pair. I mean, really, you know, we got to think. Von Hof checked back the flop Jack high, checked back the turn when there was a 10, so he doesn't really have a Jack, right? The only thing he's really value betting is a 10 or a Queen.
There is the call, and what a call from Stevenson. He will take it with the bigger 5.
Well, you heard Von Hof mention earlier that he knows Felix Stevenson from playing with him. He knows he's a tough player, and there's an indication with a really nice call right there, Antonio.
That was a great call.
And the Vikings are happy about it.
That I love the bet just because I'm getting called, you know, I'm only getting called by a better hand, and my hand has showdown value, so I don't know if I would have bet.
All right, interesting goings on early here. Three-handed, back with more at the Rio in a moment. This is Veterans Day, the holiday that celebrates and honors those who have served in the U.S. Armed Forces. A time-honored tradition that poker is the game of choice among armed servicemen and women. Many a tale has been told of poker front and center to pass the time. We thank all the veterans who have served. Final table summary, 244 hands played last night. All the Americans eliminated, left with 3 Europeans who live in London. The chip leader, Jorrit Von Hof, Martin Jacobson in second place, Felix Stevenson in third.
And we are going to have our first-time main event champion, either from Sweden, Norway, or the Netherlands.
From Norway is that man, Felix Stevenson. He came into the final table with the second biggest chip stack, 32.77 million right now with 48 million and change. And he just calls from the small blind with 10-6 off.
That was such a massive call for Stevenson on the previous hand. I mean, if he called and was wrong, he loses a significant portion of his chips. He, you know, emotionally, he paid somebody off with bottom pair. So just a massive turn of events for him to call and be right there, which plays a lot going into, you know, future hands.
Yeah, absolutely. Confidence, any read you might have had on your opponent. Stevenson and Van Hoff both missed. King high is best for Van Hoff here.
Bet
Stevenson first to act and bets $1,000,007.
I don't think Van Hoff is just...
And a fold from Van Hoff.
I mean, I didn't think he would just give that up that easily. I mean...
Vikings love their man picking up chips as we take a little closer look at Felix Stevenson. Born in Oslo and speaks a lot of languages, plays a lot of sports, but he's a fan of the New York Giants.
That's unfortunate. But yeah, he does play a lot of sports. So soccer was his best sport. He played it as a youth. He says he's also really good at tennis, squash, golf, and ping pong. I'd still take Billy Pappas against him in ping pong, and I don't think Billy's ever picked up a racket.
$50 million even for Stevenson. Still the short stack as we take a look at all the payouts that happened and all the payouts to be. Third place $3.8 million, second place $5.1 million, and a cool $10 million for the new world champion.
Sorry?
36.
Raise 3.6.
I miss Billy Pappas.
I do too. Billy was quite a wonderful addition to the November Niners. Went out in 5th place. How about that? Earning over $2 million.
Yeah, genuine, humble, joyful, just everything you want to see. He was every man. The only amateur. It was great to watch him.
How many foosball tables can you buy with $2 million?
Lots.
How many foosball balls can you buy?
Well, you don't need that many, first of all. They're pretty hard. Jacobson makes the call of Van Hoff's raise. Jack 4 against King Jack. They both miss.
Well, Van Hoff plopped top pair with a Jack kicker.
I'm sorry, there's a king. I apologize.
That's okay.
That's still late for me.
By the way, I do miss Billy, but as Daniel Negreanu mentioned in his tweet, these three guys are class acts. They have a joy to their game. They
47.
act the right way around the table.
4.7.
It's hard to root against any of these three.
And we saw this yesterday. It just seems that Yort hits more flops than anyone else.
He does flop it. He's very strong. I mean, if you're going to be a poker player, one of your talents should be flopping hands. I mean, if you have that talent figured out, you're golden. I think that's how Phil Hellmuth wins. That's what we all think in the poker world, but we're not quite sure yet.
Exactly how he wants it.
13 bracelets worth of hitting flops. That's a lot of flops Phil's hit.
And a fold from Jacobson, and Yort Van Hoff extending his chip lead. And he was found to be very resilient during day one. As I mentioned, he was up over 110 million, or right at 110 million. He was knocked down for a while. He gave up the chip lead for a while. Then he worked his way back. Small chunks, big chunks. And that's he never took any huge hits, but still, they punched at him, and he recovered very well.
He did recover well, especially after that massive loss with the Jacks against Stevenson's ace-8. I mean, if he wins that pot, he has so many chips, and everybody else is super short stack. So that was pretty detrimental for him.
26.
But he's still here. He's still fighting. He's still the chip leader.
And he's still raising on the button with ace-deuce. Small blind. Jacobson with 65.1 million. He says, I'm not going to play. Stevenson now with the big blind. And he has already committed 1.2 million chips and the 200,000 ante.
Call.
And he will make the call with Queen 7. $10 deuce tray, and there you go again.
Check.
Van Hoff with bottom pair, but he does hit the flop. Stevenson checks after missing.
So I think it's probably more reasonable to bet here versus the last time when he checked bottom pair. I think here he actually should fire, just because it's unlikely that his opponent has a 3, given he called a raise out of the big blind. So really the only hand that he's worried about is maybe a 10, and it's unlikely that he has a 10. And even if he has a 10, he can't really check raise him. He's only going to call. And if he does call, well, look, an ace or a deuce could peel off on the turn. He could even win a much bigger pot. So I think betting bottom pair is a must here.
He does, and he will take the pot once again. So Stevenson and Jacobson were doing their best to flail away at the chip leader, but he's wearing something quite strong. There's some armor under there somewhere, fighting back, extending his chip lead three-handed. One of the perks of being a November Niner is you get to do cool stuff for free. We got all November Niners on the zip line that runs from atop the Voodoo Lounge at the very peak of the Rio over to the Ipanema Tower. And that was Martin Jacobson.
Martin Jacobson came into this final table towards the bottom of the leaderboard, but 6 players are gone. And although he's had to grind a short stack at times, he is still here. He told me that part of his edge comes from his greater experience at no-limit hold'em tournaments, but he didn't let that get in his way. He prepared intensely in the 4 months leading up to the final table. He said that he worked with poker pros who all specialized in different variants of the game, looking at short stack play, heads up, 6-max, even cash game play, just to give himself an even deeper understanding of the game of poker. He said that for a pro not to do that, it would be unthinkable, especially given what's at stake.
Martin played a final table simulation with his poker friends 30 or 40 times in preparation, and every time Mark Newhouse was knocked out in 9th place.
You see Jacobson with the opening raise to 2.7 million with King Jack, but Stevenson is the one who woke up with queens.
It'll be interesting to see what type of read Jacobson has in Stevenson here, because Jacobson has a pretty big hand three-handed.
He does have a pretty big hand. He also has position, but at the same time, it's still King Jack offsuit. It's not, you know, Ace Queen or Ace Jack, or, you know, it's a hand that can get kind of tricky. If you flop a pair with it, sometimes, you know, more often with the Jack, you could get yourself in a lot of trouble, because what happens is, let's say the flop comes Jack 3-9, right? And your opponent actually has what he's representing, which is queens, kings, or aces. It's very difficult to get away from that hand once you connect with it. So you can get yourself in a lot of trouble, basically, because it's almost impossible to fold it.
It just seems so unlikely three-handed that someone has aces, kings, or queens.
Yeah, absolutely. Given that he has position, he might talk himself into a call, but it's also a pretty big 3-bet to 8.2. If this was in the 7 million or 6 million range, he's 100% calling. So it really just comes down to what kind of read does he get off Stevenson right now. I think there's a chance he might call here in position and take a flop. But if he flops a king or a jack, obviously he's going with it, and he knows that. So he doesn't want to get himself in a spot where, you know, let's say his opponent actually has ace king and it comes king 3-9. He's never going to get away from king jack, given the amount of chips that are in the pot already. So this is really tough. This is kind of close.
Once again, Stevenson with the hammer. Jacobson checking out chip stacks on the big scoreboard behind him.
I'm curious to see what he does here. I mean, if I'm sitting in that seat, I'm in a really tough spot. I probably, I mean, I don't love it. You know, I have to call another 5.5 million. I might call just because I have position. If I didn't have position, I probably wouldn't even think about it, but I'm probably going to call here and take a flop. But look, Jacobson has been so good at getting away from it. He's been so patient, not getting out of line. But it's also three-handed, and King Jack is a good hand. This really could go either way.
This is one of his longest pre-flop tanks. He's over 2 minutes now with the King Jack offsuit.
Wow.
I think I
really
would
struggling.
I think I would call.
There you go. A couple of tournament specialists agree.
But you know, it's actually really close. It's not a definitive decision.
Scott Seaver coaching Felix Stevenson here, and we will see a flop. 7, 8, 9, a couple of diamonds. And so a gut shot for Jacobson.
Right, a gut shot and potentially 2 overcards. A lot of times when your opponent 3-bets you, you know, he has a hand like ace queen or ace king or ace jack, and so he's thinking, well, maybe Stevenson missed this flop. But no version of Stevenson is ever folding if the money starts going in. There's just no way he's ever going to fold. I mean, this isn't the greatest flop in the world, but it's not a bad flop.
Check.
Stevenson is going to check it.
Wow, this is a very, very tricky play. I can't say that I love this play just because Jacobson's not really the kind of player that's going to bite. Other players might bite here on this flop, but by Stevenson checking, it kind of shows that, you know, maybe I missed the flop. But if he missed the flop, there's just too much money out there not to fire. Even if he had ace-king, I think he's always going to fire at this pot. He's not going to just check fold. So I think the check actually looks a little bit fishy. Jacobson is super sharp. I don't think he's going to fall for it.
Why do you think Felix did check the pocket queens?
Just to show weakness. I think Jacobson might just peel a free one.
I would have thought Felix didn't want to give a free one, and I would think that Martin would take the free one.
Right. Well, let's just say Stevenson had ace-king, which is definitely in his range, right? And it comes 7, 8, 9. Well, there's 18 million chips out there. You can't just check fold on this flop. And you're not going to check raise. So your only ammo is to stab at the pot.
6.2.
Wow.
He does not take the free card as offered. Jacobson will bet 6.2 million.
And we'll see an all in, and that'll be the end of that hand. It was fun playing, boys.
You see the pot size. And the bulk of those chips are Stevenson's to this point. But you're thinking that scale might tip a little bit right here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no way he's going to check call here out of position. There's just too many dangerous cards on the turn. So for sure he's raising. For sure. I would lay 5 to 1. And if I'm wrong, I'm going to buy Phil Homa's poker book and learn how to play poker.
Our champion from last year, Ryan Reese, in the crowd. Shuffle up and deal. And he says all in. Stevenson, and there is the fold. And it's amazing how you just
heard his poker sales.
Oh, I like the Norwegian battlement lit up down there, and they love Stevenson moving into second place now with 63 million. Jacobson down to just below 50 million. Van Hof still leads with 87 million, as you see. But Felix Stevenson with a big hand, and he got some value from the queens.
The first 4 months of this year, Felix played Pot Limit Omaha 12 hours a day, every day online to become a black card pro at Full Tilt Poker. That exhausted him, so he wanted to take a break from poker, and that essentially led him to Las Vegas, the poker capital of the world, for vacation. And ends up playing in the main event, the only event he played this summer at the World Series.
Raise 2.7. 8, 2.8.
Van Hof is from the Netherlands, but Stevenson is actually here largely because of a $1,000 sports bet he made on the Netherlands in the World Cup that paid 60 to 1, and that convinced him to come to Las Vegas, and that easily paid for his 10 grand main event entry fee.
By the way, that last pot was good for Van Hof. He wants the chips to move to his right. Even though he's the chip leader, he doesn't want someone with more chip, not more chips, but a bigger stack than his other opponent on his left.
We mentioned our 30-minute delay with the cards up in the air. We're going to go old school for a moment with technical difficulties. We don't have the card reader operational right now, so we're going to rely on Antonio to tell us what they have.
Oh, man, I wasn't prepared for that.
Re-raise, 8.2.
The raise, 2.8 million from Stevenson, and now a re-raise to 8.2 million from Van Hof.
So we've seen him do this with pretty strong hands. He makes a huge over-raise. This time he took a little bit longer than he usually takes.
So back to Stevenson now, the original raiser, to 2.8 million. Stevenson in second place now, working with 63 million chips. And he will give it up to the 3-bet. Van Hof has been very effective with that re-raise so far at the final table, and it continues here. So one of these three will be $10 million richer by the end of the night. But we have plenty of poker left. We welcome you back to the 2014 World Series of Poker main event. Final table telecast presented by Gentleman Jack. Down to 3. We've seen some nice movement from Felix Stevenson. You know, a lot of players don't care about winning this. They just want the money. But Felix Stevenson says this is a huge deal for him and for all of Norway.
Becoming the world champion or whatever, that's unbelievable. I mean, or being like having such a good shot at becoming the world champion, that's just amazing. And so that would be awesome, and I'm going to try to capitalize on this moment and try to make the most of it, because it's, for most of us, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
Yeah, only 5 million people in Norway. They love poker there, though. 9 Norwegians cashed at this year's main event. That's a pretty big number for just 5 million. 5 million's about the same size as Minnesota.
Wow. They do love their poker, and we have it for you here on ESPN, Down to a Champion tonight. We are still working on our graphic problem, so we'll try to keep you up to date and let you know cards when we know them. Then Hoff raised to $2.6 million with 5-4 of hearts.
Let Antonio earn a paycheck again, okay? Let him earn a paycheck and try to figure out what they have.
It's a lot easier when I know what they have. Please, Lon, continue.
Jacobson now with a re-raise to $8 million. Stevenson folded, so now back to Von Hoff. You want to know what he has?
No. Jacobson doesn't usually do this without a pretty good hand. He did it last night with 8-7 suited. But right here, you know, he took his time. There was some finesse there. He's pretty strong at always looking the same, whether he has it or doesn't have it. But I get the feeling that he's got a hand. I don't think he's doing this light.
So the raise on the button to open things from Van Hoff with 5-4, and it's pocket tens for Jacobson, and he will win the pot with the 3-bet, and he needs to get back in this. He's now creeping back closer to Stevenson. Jacobson up to 52.5 million chips. Stevenson 58.5 million. So you were right, pocket tens for Jacobson, and he has been pretty consistent. And if you're picking that up, obviously the other players are noticing that as well.
Yeah, also when you're next to somebody, their energy is so different than watching them on a screen. And so the only people that can, you know, read the other two opponents better than anybody else in the world is the guy sitting next to them. I mean, no matter how much you protect yourself with a hoodie, a hat, sunglasses, your body will give off some sort of a natural energy, whether you obviously want to call or don't want to call.
Stevenson just calls for 600,000 with 10-5 off.
Speaking of the hoodie and the hat and the glasses, and it's a pet peeve of mine, this is a better dressed trio than usual, but still, you know, I'm reminded of Crandall Addington. He's a Poker Hall of Famer, twice main event runner-up. He used to say that if he was well-dressed, he would play better, Antonio. He claimed that one of the reasons he wrote a coat and tie at the table is it reminded him to remain disciplined. You probably disagree with that?
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Barefoot Magician.
A 3-bet from Van Hoff to 3.8 million with Queen Deuce, and he induces a fold from Stevenson, and this 10-5 go into the muck. And so it is a 3-bet frenzy here. Von Hoff still the leader now with an even 91 million chips. The other two in the 50 million range. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to the Penn & Teller Theater inside the Rio, Las Vegas. The 2014 World Series of Poker main event final table. Billy Pappas, one of the more entertaining players. The amateur came in with the 6th biggest stack, and he goes out with a number 5 payday, $2.1 million. And he is here to watch the action. I guess the hotel room's already paid for by the Foosball Association of the World. I don't know. I'm Lon McCarron with Norman Chad, Antonio S. Vandiari, and Karis Scott will be helping us out on the breaks with Daniel Negreanu and Phil Hellmuth. And just to remind you, we're on a 30-minute delay, and we are working on the card display issue that we're having a problem with. So we'll keep you up to date on what the cards are, but Jacobson gets a walk with ace-7 offsuit. So walks are good. Walks can add up, and there you see ace-7.
You wear a T-shirt like that when you're taking a walk. They need to wear better clothes, Lon and Antonio. Did you see Rain Man when Dustin Hoffman and Tom Cruise were coming down that escalator to beat the house? They were dressed to the nines.
because they're beating the house. Here they're beating each other, and you want to be comfortable. Because when you're comfortable, you can play better.
Okay.
There's no arguing there.
You want to be comfortable, you go out to a ranch and wear your jeans. In here, you step up your game a little, you look a little more professional. Everyone is happier.
Do you approach somebody differently who, say, Tony Dunst? You see Tony Dunst, you don't know who Tony Dunst is. He's out there with a suit and tie, and then you see Mark Newhouse come in. You don't know who Mark Newhouse is, and how do you approach the two differently?
It's funny. If I didn't know them, yes, I would approach them differently. But because I know they're both professionals, I approach them the same.
All right. Well, got to get to action here. Jacobson, as bear with us. Hopefully our card reader is back. Pocket aces and raise. Hopefully they'll stay with us. Stevenson with the call with King Jack. 7-10-5.
Pretty good flop for aces. So I don't see Jacobson getting tricky here. I think he raised pre-flop and he's continuation betting most of the time when he doesn't have it. So I think he'll probably just lead into Stevenson. And Stevenson has 2 overcards to the flop, right? We've seen him fold bottom pair.
4 million.
I think we'll see a float here, to be honest. Just because you have 2 overcards. Also, if your opponent missed, it really puts him on defense once you call the flop one time.
Give me 2 sentences to describe a float for the folks out there.
So a float is when you call with nothing, or a hand that has potential but nothing at the current moment, in which you can take it away at a later street from your opponent. So a lot of times Jacobson, he raised pre-flop, he's bet the flop. That's pretty standard, right? So he's doing that with ace-queen and ace-king as well. If you call here and he has one of those hands, well, it's hard for him to continue again on the turn. So this is a great example of a float. And in this particular situation, Stevenson has 2 overcards that are fantastic.
And he hits his king, does Stevenson here, and that's maybe the worst news he could have seen based on what we know at Jacobson's aces.
Clearly, Stevenson can't see that Jacobson has aces, but really, if I'm sitting there in Stevenson's position and I just floated this flop with King Jack and I catch a king on the turn, I am ecstatic.
You're floating for a reason, and the reason just came home.
Ecstatic.
10 million of it.
And Stevenson is hoping, Jacobson is hoping the same thing, that card hit his Norwegian counterpart.
Well, we get at least a call here from Felix, and I suspect we will. This pot is really starting to build between the 2 second and third contenders right now behind Van Hoof.
And you saw Van Hoof talking to his rail, and he would much prefer that any big hand have him involved in it and have him holding the aces. Because one of these guys is going to get much, much stronger and be able to challenge the chip leader. And look at this, a call from Stevenson with top pair, decent kicker.
This pot approaching 30 million.
Actually over 35 million. The River Queen right now, and the aces are best for Jacobson. Can he continue to get paid off? It's an undercard to the kings of Stevenson, so why not?
Well, that's a really interesting card. I mean, if Stevenson knows that Jacobson has aces, and Jacobson fires the river, you could even contemplate shoving here because it's very difficult to call a shove with just 1 pair here. That queen could have, hit a wide range of hands for Stevenson to improve past just a 1 pair hand. So depending on what happens on the river here, I think Jacobson would probably go for value. But that queen is a pretty dangerous card. Queen 10 gets there. King Queen gets there. Jack 9 gets there. There's a lot of hands that queen could have improved.
Stevenson awaiting Jacobson's decision here on the river. 35.8 million in the middle. $15 million is the announcement. As you see, the graphics still being fiddled with. We'll perfect that shortly, but
so Stevenson's in a really tough spot here. He's got a pair of kings. He floated the flop. He caught a dream card. But
he said call with top pair on board, but it's top pair in poker for Martin Jacobson to take that huge pot of $65.8 million.
And suddenly Jacobson right on Von Hof's heels, and Stevenson down to 20 big blinds.
Felix Stevenson down to 24 million and change. Jacobson with 86.3 million. Von Hof only with 90 million. And what a mountain this guy has climbed. We have witnessed every step of the way. And what a cooler for Felix Stevenson.
Boy. Is there a moral to the story on floating, or that's just the way it goes?
No, I mean, that's just the way it goes. I mean, it's really, you know, it's tough for me to sit here and say that you want to think about raising on the river there. But a lot of times you want to consider the option of turning your hand into a bluff. If your opponent doesn't have a set or two pair there, it's almost impossible for him to call another 24 million. You know, it's basically his whole tournament. So, you know, given that I could see the cards, obviously it's easier for me to say, like I said, but you really want to contemplate it.
That would have been a very high risk, high reward bluff.
High risk, high reward bluff. I don't think that Jacobson can go. I mean, I really don't. That was a pretty dangerous river card there. So, you know, all of a sudden you have 24 million. You're sitting there playing three-handed with two monster stacks. It's pretty tough. He's going to be playing a lot tighter than, you know, both these guys now.
Jacobson folds to stack his winnings. And Felix with the blinds at 1.2 million, running out of options. 1.2 million for the big blind. Not sure which part of that he intends to put in the middle.
I'm all in.
All in.
The big part. He shoves. He started this hand with 24 million, and 200,000 was for the ante. It's not accurate. So he is all in for even 24 million and folded, and he will take that. And once again, having a little. There you see King Queen offsuit. Von Hof had nothing to play with, and so Stevenson will take it, and you can just see his demeanor is very sour at this point. You can see why. I mean, this is a big moment for him. He was on the upswing. He was the one that was challenging the chip leader, and then he runs into aces, and he had top pair on board, but it was not good enough. He folds his button.
You mentioned these three guys all living in London. You know, back in the old days, everyone at the main event final table was from Texas. Now they live in London. I guarantee they hardly ever see each other because all day long their heads are buried in their smartphones or they're online playing poker. Plus, Antonio, I guarantee you they're walking around all day hungry because they can't find any good affordable food in London.
A reprise.
You don't know where to eat, my friend. London has some of the best restaurants in the world.
Van Hoff just called. Jacobson checked his big blind. Flop of 9-7-7.
I'll take Paris. I'll take Madrid. I'll take Rome. I'll take Barcelona. I'll take San Francisco. I'll take New York. I'll take London when I want to get on a good subway system.
Action now.
18.
Von Hoff.
1.8.
Oh, he said 18. And they're going to let him slide with 1.8. You better be careful with that in the future. Sometimes players do a shorthand version of the bet they intend. They say 18, they might mean 1,800 if it's in that range, in that realm. He said 18, and that could very easily have been meant 18 million.
So usually verbal is binding, but when he says 18, you know, he could theoretically be saying 1,800 X, you know, or 1,800, well, whatever. So you can't really hold him to just 18. So yeah, verbal is binding, but he didn't say 18 million. If he said 18 million, well, sure, that is binding. And the rules are obviously the same for every single person. That's the only way this can work. If you know, slip, you get punished.
So we've got 9-7-7 on the flop, 10 of diamonds on the turn as Jacobson made the call of 1.8 million. So a 10 high flop, 2 clubs, a check this time from Von Hoff. pardon me, Van Hoof.
These boys are serious. Got the shades today.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I thought he was, based on what we saw yesterday, I think he's more intimidating without the shades.
I agree.
He's an intimidating either way.
It's interesting because I wouldn't change anything from what I did yesterday. You know, everything he did worked great. He was super intimidating without the shades. I was intimidated from the booth back here.
Right, no doubt.
And, you know, I just wouldn't shift anything that I did that worked so well yesterday. I would have just stayed exactly the same.
Yeah, I got to agree with you.
3.8 million from Jacobson.
With the big stack, he still lords over the table. He's in the middle of the table. He's got the most chips. He's 6'8", 7 foot, maybe 7'2".
He could be, bigger than that, maybe. He does stand taller than I do, so that's intimidating enough.
Just to notice his heavy breathing, you can see his sweater actually moving up and down.
And he calls.
If you noticed that or not, but the sweater was moving.
I noticed that yesterday, and he ended up having a really big hand when he did that yesterday. He with Jack 9, and he actually has a pair of 9s, and you see now he's got a full boat with another 7 coming out.
This will be tough to get away from. I mean, he's got a boat. The only hand he's losing to is a 10, obviously. I mean, yeah, of course you could have quads, but it's unlikely. So
still working on getting those numbers correct on the pot size.
There's something to be said about betting on the river, making it look like you missed a draw because it was a pretty draw-heavy board on the turn. You might bet a 9 in order to, if you're going to bet check call anyway, sometimes you might want to bet. You could also induce a bluff.
$2 million is the bet now on the river with his 7s full of 9s. And we have yet to see Jacobson's cards, so very interesting that he's taking this much time. There's a 10 on board, which would beat Van Hoof, and of course any overpair. Jacobson coming off a huge win against Stevenson, and now mixed up with Van Hoof with the chip lead in the balance, and he does fold. Jacobson gives it up. Van Hoof up to 95.8 million. We continue three-handed, and you see how intense it is. None of these final three giving an inch.